He was already crying when the horse stopped. The rope cut into his wrists, skin split and dark. He leaned away from the fence like it might move. It didn't. The old cowboy stayed mounted, reins loose, eyes on the knots like they might speak first. He didn't say a word. The boy swallowed hard and spoke before he could stop himself. "Don't tell him I cried." The cowboy looked past the boy, down the dirt road where nothing moved. "Who?" The boy sniffed. "My dad. He said this fence teach me." The cowboy breathed once through his nose. "Fence don't teach. Men do." The boy blinked, slow, like he didn't know if that was kindness or another trick. He waited for pain. None came. The cowboy slid down, boots steady, knife already in his hand. He didn't rush. He cut slow, like time mattered. The rope fell but the boy stayed bent, arms locked behind him, head down. He didn't run. He didn't cry. He stayed. "You can stand," the cowboy said. "I ain't going nowhere." The boy shook his head. His body knew rules his mouth didn't. "Stand too fast and something comes." The cowboy stayed crouched with him. No grabbing. No orders. Just waiting. A truck idled up the road. Engine low. Someone watching through glass. No door opened. No voice called out. The fence kept its mouth shut. The cowboy didn't turn around. He reached again, careful, and eased the boy's hands free. Blood smeared his palms. The boy flinched. "I won't," the cowboy said. "I ain't him." The boy nodded without lifting his head. His breath came short, like he'd been holding it all day. The fence creaked behind him. The cowboy took off his hat and held it out. The boy stared at it like it might bite. "You thirsty?" "No, you shakin' dot." "I ain't cold." The cowboy didn't argue. He set the hat on the ground anyway. The truck rolled on. Dust hung and fell. Quiet stayed where it landed. The boy straightened a little. His legs wobbled. He locked his knees. He didn't cry. He didn't say thank you. He asked the only thing that mattered. "You gonna tell him?" The cowboy shook his head. "I don't tell men how to be cruel." He stepped closer, slow, and the boy didn't back away. That was new. The cowboy touched the rope still hanging from the post. He left it there. He lifted the boy, light as a sack of feed, and set him on the saddle. The boy froze, hands gripping leather like it might vanish. The cowboy swung up in front of him. "Hold on," he said. The boy did. Behind them, the rope stayed tied, saying nothing at all, as they rode away. The boy rode stiff behind him, arms locked around the cowboy's waist like he didn't trust bone to bone. His hands shook against the worn coat. Not from cold. From memory. The horse moved steady, like it knew not to hurry. The boy pressed his face between the cowboy's shoulders and watched the road slide past. He didn't look back. He asked anyway. "You gonna take me back?" The cowboy didn't turn. No, the boy swallowed. The horse kept walking. "You sure?" "I don't say things twice." The boy nodded into the man's back, like agreement needed somewhere to land. His fingers twitched. He tried to stop them. They wouldn't. He tucked them under the coat seam, ashamed of the shaking. The cowboy felt it and didn't comment. They rode through a stretch where the land dipped low. Fence posts leaned like tired men. The boy stared at every one. His breath hitched each time they passed. The cowboy slowed without being asked. "You all right?" The boy lied. "Yeah." The lie came easy. The truth didn't. The horse snorted. The boy flinched. The cowboy spoke softer. "Ain't gonna tie you." "I know. You don't sound like it." The boy went quiet. After a while he asked, "Small, what's your name?" The cowboy thought on it longer than needed. Don't use it much. Still got one. Most do. The boy waited. The road hummed. Can I call you something, Dot? The cowboy shrugged. Call me when you need me. That felt like nothing and everything. They passed a burned farmhouse, roof caved in, walls black and open to the sky. The boy stared too long. His hands started again. The cowboy noticed. You seen fire before? The boy nodded. I smelled it. The horse slowed like it understood. The boy leaned forward, voice tight. It stays in your nose. So does smoke. Smoke leaves. Eventually. The boy watched the empty windows. He didn't blink. It was loud. Fire is. He didn't wake up. The cowboy didn't ask who. He didn't need to. You didn't make it. I tried. The boy squeezed his eyes shut. The cowboy kept his hands loose on the reins. They rode on. The sun dipped low and turned the dirt red. The boy felt it in his eyes but didn't complain. He counted steps without knowing why. When the gate came into view, he stopped counting. The ranch stood quiet, low and worn, like it didn't care who noticed. The boy straightened and let go with one hand. He didn't ask where they were. He didn't ask to stay. He waited. The horse stopped at the gate. The cowboy swung down and opened it. The boy stayed frozen. You can get down, the cowboy said. Or not. The boy nodded and slid off slow. His legs buckled. He caught himself. He stood there, dust on his boots he didn't remember owning. This yours. For now. The boy stared at the ground. I ain't got nowhere. The cowboy closed the gate. Neither did I once. That wasn't an answer, but it felt like one. The boy looked up. You gonna tell me when to leave? The cowboy met his eyes. I'll tell you when you have to. The boy breathed out like something heavy moved off his chest. He followed without being told, hands still shaking, but walking forward all the same. They stepped inside together and the door shut behind them with a sound that felt final. The boy flinched at it and stood still, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. The house held its breath. Dust hung in the light like it had nowhere else to go. The boy whispered, Your house don't like me. The cowboy set his hat on the table. House don't like anyone. The boy listened to the quiet and shook his head. It's quiet wrong. The cowboy poured water into a chipped cup. That's just grief settlin'. The word landed heavy. The boy didn't ask whose. He watched the walls like they might answer him. He took one step, then another, each one tested. The floor creaked and he froze. It's fine, the cowboy said. It remembers me. The boy frowned. Rememberin' hurts. The cowboy didn't argue. He told the boy to sit and the boy didn't. He stood until his legs burned, like pain was proof he was still there. The cowboy came back with a rag and a bowl. He knelt slow and lifted the boy's wrists. The boy jerked back, breath sharp. I ain't him, the cowboy said. I know, the boy said. That's why I'm scared. The cowboy cleaned the cuts gentle, no rush. Blood washed away and left pale skin underneath. The boy watched his own hands like they belonged to someone else. You can yell, the cowboy said. I won't stop you. The boy shook his head. Yellin' makes it worse. The cowboy nodded like he understood too well. He tied clean cloth around the wrists, loose enough to breathe. The boy flexed his fingers, slow, testing freedom. His hands still shook. You hungry? The cowboy asked. Don't know, the boy said. The answer felt honest. The house stayed quiet. Not kind. Just waiting. The boy shifted his weight and listened again, to pipes, to wood, to a sound that felt like thinking. It listens, he said. The cowboy looked at him. It don't judge. It remembers, the boy said. The cowboy didn't deny it. The boy's eyes caught on something by the door. A badge hung on a nail, dull and scratched, catching light it didn't deserve. He stared. What's that? He asked. The cowboy followed his gaze. Old trouble. You wear it? The boy asked. Not anymore. Why keep it? The cowboy thought. So it don't forget me. The boy looked back at the badge. It looks tired. The cowboy almost smiled. The boy rubbed his wrists and stood closer to the table, like choosing a place. Am I allowed? He started. The cowboy waited. Am I allowed to stay quiet? The cowboy nodded once. That's your right. The boy breathed out, slow, like learning something new. A knock hit the door, sharp and certain. The knock came again, louder this time, and the boy jumped back, arms crossing his chest. The cowboy walked to the door, slow, deliberate, and opened it. The sheriff stood there, boots dusty, hat tipped low, eyes calm but sharp. Evenin', he said. Heard you picked up something that ain't yours. The cowboy didn't smile. Found something someone dropped. The sheriff's eyes flicked past the cowboy, landing on the boy. Boy's father's lookin' dot. The boy's voice came soft, almost swallowed by the porch wind. He ain't. The sheriff noticed the badge hanging on the wall. Didn't know ghosts still answered doors. The cowboy leaned against the frame. They don't. They stay. The sheriff's mouth twitched like he wanted a fight but didn't. Morning changes minds, he said and stepped back. The boy exhaled a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The sheriff tipped his hat and walked to his truck, boots crunching on the gravel. The cowboy closed the door slowly, listening to the truck drive off. Dust settled. Silence returned, thick like wool. The boy moved closer to the table, touching it, testing it, as if it might tell him the truth. He gonna come back? He asked. Maybe, the cowboy said. Maybe not. The boy looked at the badge again. You kept it for him? The cowboy shook his head. Kept it for me. You was law? The cowboy's eyes darkened. Tried. Why quit? Didn't stop the right man. The boy nodded, like that explained everything and nothing at all. Outside, the sun sank lower, streaking red across the floor through dusty windows. The boy pressed his hands to the table, flexing fingers, feeling the wood grain beneath him. The cowboy poured water in the chipped cup, set it down. Drink. The boy shook his head. The cowboy didn't argue. Sit, he said. The boy hesitated, then lowered himself onto the wooden chair, legs stiff. The cowboy watched him, calm, waiting. Silence stretched and the boy listened to it, learned it, let it fill the room. Somewhere down the road, the sheriff's truck rumbled distant and low, then faded. The cowboy went to the stove, heating a small pot of beans, letting the smell fill the air. The boy's stomach tightened, uncertain if he was hungry or just scared. He kept staring at the badge. What did he do? He asked. A man, the cowboy said. Doesn't matter now. The boy looked away, squinting at a crack in the wall. The cowboy came back, set the beans in front of him. Eat, he said. The boy pushed the plate, unsure. The cowboy sat across, fork in hand, watching. No words. Just the scrape of metal against enamel and the soft breathing of a boy who had held too much inside. Night pressed against the windows, heavy and close. The boy finally picked up the fork, small bites, careful. The cowboy ate slow, watching the boy learn to trust that the food wouldn't hurt him. Outside, the wind moved the dry grass in waves, carrying the distant echo of trucks and men who had rules but didn't care for children. Inside, there was only the house, the boy, the cowboy, and the quiet weight of decision, to protect or leave. The boy finally looked at the cowboy. You gonna tell anyone? The cowboy met his eyes. No, even him? Even him. The boy nodded, letting the words settle. He didn't know if it was promise or threat. The cowboy leaned back. Morning comes. Do I have to leave then? The cowboy's voice was low. Only if you want. The boy exhaled slow, feeling some small victory in air that belonged only to him. Outside, the last light disappeared. The house listened and waited. The boy didn't know it yet, but the rules were different here. Not better, not worse, just different. He could breathe. The cowboy didn't speak, only stirred the beans, letting the night press around them. The boy reached for the cup of water, fingers brushing cold enamel, and felt the smallest sense of belonging. The sheriff's words had faded. Only this remained. The house held its memory. They held theirs. The boy leaned forward, head down, silent, and waited for what came next. The boy sat at the table, elbows resting on the rough wood, eyes fixed on the plate of beans he hadn't touched. The cowboy stood by the stove, silent, stirring the last of the stew. Outside, the wind pressed against the house, brushing loose boards, whispering through cracks like it carried voices. He drinks 'cause his daddy drank, the boy said finally, voice low. The cowboy didn't stir. That don't make it holy, he said after a pause. The boy shrugged, turning the plate slowly. Fence was for hours. The cowboy leaned against the counter, arms crossed. How many? The boy swallowed hard. Till I stopped yellin'. Silence stretched and pressed down. The boy's fingers drummed on the table. Mom died, he said. His voice cracked a little. I didn't see her. Just gone. The cowboy's hands tightened on the counter edge. He swallowed. I tried once. Didn't save someone I loved. Feels like you carry it for the rest of your life. The boy stared down at the beans, thinking maybe he understood. They didn't speak again for a long moment. Outside, distant thunder rolled low, deep in the hills, not rain but memory. The boy traced lines in the wood grain. He said the fence would teach me right, he murmured. It taught you wrong, the cowboy said. Men teach, not fences. The boy's hands clenched, unclenched. I wanted to yell. I did. He didn't stop me. I just stopped. That's learning too, the cowboy said. The boy looked up, eyes wet, blinking. I didn't know if I could feel angry and scared at the same time. I still don't know. The cowboy poured a cup of water, set it down. Doesn't matter if you do. Matters that you feel it. The boy let his fingers rest on the table. I don't know what's worse. Him or me for still wanting him to care. The cowboy shook his head slightly. Doesn't make you wrong. Silence fell, heavy and deep. The boy's stomach growled faintly. He looked at the food again. I can't eat. You don't have to. Not yet, the cowboy said. Outside, the wind pushed at the roof like it remembered old arguments. The boy traced the scar on his wrist from the rope. I feel it still. In my hands, in my sleep. It won't leave. The cowboy walked over, crouched slightly. Scars don't leave. You learn to carry them. Carry them, the boy repeated, voice brittle. Like he carried you? The cowboy shook his head. Like you carry you. Nobody else matters for that. The boy didn't speak. He just nodded, taking small, careful breaths. Thunder rolled again, faint, through the hills. It sounded like something long forgotten, something never fixed. The boy leaned his forehead on his crossed arms, thinking of his mother, thinking of the fence, thinking of everything that hurt and nothing that helped. The cowboy didn't touch him. He didn't need to. Just stayed. Just watched. The boy's hands itched to move, to twist, to escape feeling, but he let them rest. Outside, shadows crept across the floor through the window panes. The cowboy poured himself a cup of water and drank slow. You ain't alone tonight, he said. I know, the boy murmured. But I feel like I am. The cowboy didn't answer. He let the boy sit with the truth. The plate of beans sat between them, cold, untouched. Outside, the hills breathed and rolled. The house remembered. The boy whispered again. Fence won't teach me nothing I can use. The cowboy nodded. No. Only what men do can teach you. Only what men don't do too. The boy stared down at his hands. I don't want to be him, he said. Good, the cowboy said. The boy looked up, searching for something in the man's eyes. I don't want to forget her either. The cowboy's gaze softened. You won't. You carry it right. Outside, thunder rolled again, low, distant, a drumbeat that pressed against their ribs. Inside, silence held them together, not comfort, not safety, just presence. The boy's chest rose and fell. He didn't move his hands. Didn't eat. Didn't speak. But he breathed. And that, the cowboy knew, was enough. The storm in the hills continued to echo, memory pressing against memory, until both of them sat quiet, learning how to live with it. The night outside deepened, cold but not cruel, and the boy felt the weight of grief and absence settle beside him, softening just enough to let him stay. The cowboy leaned back, watching, waiting, letting the boy own his stillness. No words came, but the room filled with something like trust, hard and small, like a seed planted in cracked earth. The boy finally whispered, I think I can sleep. Good, the cowboy said. Outside, the wind rolled over the hills again, echoing faint thunder, echoing memory, echoing something that would never leave. The boy lay down later on the floor near the stove, arms hugging knees. The cowboy stayed in the chair, quiet, still. Night held the house and the boy and the cowboy, each in their own ways, learning what fences never taught and what presence quietly could. The cowboy walked to the wall and took down the old badge. It felt heavier than it looked, metal worn, edges nicked. The boy's eyes followed every movement, careful, small. You were law? He asked. Tried, the cowboy said, fingers brushing the tarnished surface. Why quit? The cowboy didn't answer at first. He let the badge rest in his hands. Didn't stop the right man, he said finally. The boy nodded, silent. He didn't fully understand, but he felt the weight of that truth settle anyway. Outside, the sound of trucks rumbled faint, tires crunching gravel from far off. The boy stiffened. The cowboy turned and glanced through the window. Dust swirled in the late afternoon sun. The trucks slowed, waiting. The cowboy set the badge on the table and walked to the corner, lifting the rifle. His hands were steady. He loaded it, chambered around, then set it down again. The boy's eyes widened. Ain't about bullets, the cowboy said. Then what? Witness, the cowboy replied, voice low. You watch. You stay. The boy swallowed and nodded, gripping the table edge. The air felt heavy, thick with the memory of men who had power and chose cruelty. They comin' for him? The boy asked. The cowboy shook his head. Not him. You. The boy blinked. Me? The cowboy didn't need to explain. The boy understood anyway. Presence was protection. Silence was authority. The trucks outside idled. Engines hummed like restless animals. Dust drifted through the window cracks and settled on the floorboards. The boy's hands twitched again. He held them still, watching the cowboy move around the small kitchen. You ever scared? The boy asked, voice small. Always, the cowboy said. But scared ain't what stops a man. The boy considered that, watching his hands. What does? The cowboy leaned against the counter. What you're willing to see. What you'll stand for. What you'll witness. Outside, tires crunched gravel again. The boy's stomach tightened. You think I can? You already are, the cowboy said. The boy didn't answer. He just breathed, slow, letting the words sink. Shadows stretched across the walls, long and thin. The badge sat on the table, heavy with history. The boy's eyes kept returning to it. I don't know what's right, he said finally. Doesn't matter. You do what you can, the cowboy said. And watch. The boy nodded again. He felt small and large at the same time. The trucks rolled closer, engines humming low, but inside the house, the air stayed quiet, the boy learning that witnessing was as sharp a weapon as any rifle. The cowboy moved to the window, hands steady on the sill. Remember what you see. Nothing else matters. The boy pressed his hands into his knees, tight, memorizing every sound, every shadow. The wind outside pushed dust across the floor like it carried old secrets. The boy's breath came faster as the trucks idled at the edge of sight. He tried to steady himself. "I can watch," he said. "That's right," the cowboy said. "Watch and wait. They'll make their move, but you won't be caught off guard." The boy's hands rested finally, still but ready. The cowboy set the rifle down carefully. "You see everything, you learn everything. That's enough." Outside, engines hummed again, shadows shifting in the late light. Inside, the badge gleamed dull in the sunbeam. The boy didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. The cowboy went back to the stove, poured a cup of water, and handed it to the boy. "You need it," he said. The boy nodded and drank slow. Every swallow was a quiet promise to himself. Outside, dust rolled over the hills. Trucks moved. The air pressed heavy against the house. Inside, silence stretched, but it was a watchful, protective silence. The boy's eyes returned to the badge, his chest rising and falling. He was learning what it meant to see. To stay. To bear witness. The cowboy leaned against the wall and let the boy hold the quiet. Every creak, every shadow, every distant engine became part of the lesson. They didn't speak again for a long while. The house breathed with them. Dust fell in thin lines through the windows. The boy kept his gaze steady. Outside, the trucks moved again, and the boy realized he was not alone. The cowboy didn't need to speak. Presence said enough. Watching could be protection. Being still could be courage. And slowly, the boy's hands stopped shaking. Not completely. Not yet. But enough to hold on. The father came down the road clean and quiet, boots tapping against gravel, shirt tucked neat, hands empty. The boy froze at the edge of the yard, chest tight. "Boy likes drama," the father said, voice flat, calm, like he didn't need to check. The boy's eyes narrowed. "You tied me." The father shrugged. "Discipline." The cowboy stepped forward, slow, steady. "That ain't discipline." The father's jaw tightened. The sheriff's truck idled at the edge of the field, tires crunching loose gravel, windows dark. He watched without moving. The boy shifted, looking from the cowboy to his father, searching for the man he'd feared and hoped for in the same breath. "You didn't come back," the boy said, voice trembling. "I always come back," the father replied, calm, almost bored. "That's the problem," the boy said, louder, teeth tight. The father reached out. The boy flinched. The cowboy stepped between them, hands relaxed but unyielding, presence enough to block. The boy's father didn't touch him. He didn't shout. He just stood, clean and quiet, like he owned nothing but his calm. The sheriff's hand rested lightly on the truck door, ready but restrained. The cowboy didn't move. He didn't need to. Silence stretched, heavy and sharp. The boy's breath came fast, ears ringing. "I'm not scared of you anymore," he said, voice rising. The father blinked, something passing quickly in his eyes, maybe surprise, maybe acknowledgement. "You should be," he said. The boy shook his head. "No. You should be." The cowboy didn't speak. He just held the space between father and son. Dust swirled from the truck's tires, carried in the dry wind. The father's hands dropped to his sides. He didn't move closer. Didn't step back. Just existed. The boy swallowed, feeling a small, strange power settle in his chest. "I don't need you to come back," he said. The father looked at him, still calm. "You always need me," he said. "Not anymore," the boy said. The cowboy's eyes met the boy's. Quiet approval. The father finally turned, slow, deliberate. He walked to the truck, climbed in without another word. The sheriff started the engine and followed. The boy exhaled, shoulders dropping. The cowboy stepped closer, placing a hand briefly on his shoulder. "You stood," he said. The boy nodded, letting the weight of it sink. Dust drifted across the yard. The wind rattled loose boards. The sun tilted low, cutting long shadows across dry grass. The boy went back to the gate, tracing the posts with his fingers. He didn't feel fear. Just the strange emptiness of someone gone and the firm presence of someone staying. The house behind them settled in silence, memory pressing against memory. The boy looked at the cowboy. "You didn't have to do that." The cowboy shrugged. "Didn't feel right not to." The boy exhaled, a little laugh escaping. "I guess that's enough, then." The cowboy nodded. Dust rolled along the ground, the last light painting everything amber and hard. The boy's fists unclenched. The father was gone. The sheriff was gone. Only the quiet remained, thick and watchful. The boy turned back to the house. The cowboy fell in step beside him. No words. No instructions. Just presence. And for the first time, the boy felt that someone stayed, not because of duty, not because of fear, but because it mattered. Shadows stretched long across the yard. The wind whispered through the fence posts. The cowboy didn't speak. He didn't need to. The boy's chest rose and fell steady. He wasn't free yet, but he wasn't alone. Dust rolled across the yard again. The day ended without violence. The quiet held them both. The boy walked with slow steps, careful, but forward. The cowboy's hand brushed his shoulder once more, a small promise in the air. They moved toward the house together. Nothing more needed to be said. The sheriff's truck disappeared over the ridge. The father's words faded into the distance. Only the wind, the dust, the fence, and the boy remained. And he felt for the first time that standing could be enough. Neighbors gathered quietly at the edges of the property, standing in clusters along the fence line, voices low and wary. The boy pressed himself against the cowboy, watching as the murmurs floated through the dry air. Old women leaned on crooked canes, their eyes sharp despite the lines on their faces. One of them spoke first. "That ain't the first child." A man's voice cut her off. "Hush." The boy looked up, voice trembling. "Say it." The woman's eyes flicked to him. "Fence been used before." The words landed heavy, pressed into the dirt, carrying the weight of memory and repetition. The sheriff shifted slightly in the truck at the edge of the yard. Power cracked where it had once been solid. He didn't step out, but the shift was felt, small and deliberate. The cowboy walked to the table inside, lifted the old badge carefully, and held it out. "Means nothin'," he said. The boy's hands hovered over it. "Means you stayed," he replied softly, almost to himself. Silence fell over the crowd outside. No one moved. No one spoke. The boy's chest rose and fell fast. He kept his gaze on the badge, the only thing solid in the swirl of eyes and whispers. The cowboy placed the badge in the boy's hands. "Keep it," he said. "Not for me. For what you see." The boy nodded, clutching it tightly. Dust blew in from the open gate, brushing over boots and skirts, curling around the edges of the porch. The neighbors shifted, murmured again, but no one approached. The wind carried their judgment and fear, but it didn't reach the boy. He stood taller, though still wary, hands gripping the badge as if it were a talisman. The cowboy watched him, calm, steady. "You understand?" he asked. The boy looked up, eyes clear, steady. "I understand." The cowboy nodded, stepping back. Outside, the crowd thinned slowly. Some left quietly. Some stayed, whispering, watching, remembering things best left unspoken. The boy pressed the badge against his chest, feeling its weight, feeling the promise in it. The sheriff stayed in the truck a moment longer, hand resting lightly on the wheel, then drove off without a word. The sun tilted low, casting long shadows over the dry grass and worn fences. The boy walked to the gate, opened it, and let the wind move through the posts, brushing against his face. The cowboy followed, silent, letting him take the first steps of this new understanding. He held the badge tight, heart racing, feeling for the first time that staying didn't always mean weakness. It could mean witness. It could mean courage. The house behind them stood quiet, memory-laden, walls absorbing the echo of neighbors and whispers. The boy turned once to glance at it, then forward again, chest rising with each measured breath. The cowboy fell in step beside him, the quiet heavy between them, but protective. Together, they moved through the yard. Dust lifted and settled again. The badge pressed into his hands reminded him of what he'd seen, what he'd survived. And for the first time, he felt power in the act of standing still, in the act of staying. Shadows stretched across the yard, long and sharp, and the boy felt them like a cloak, not a threat. The cowboy didn't speak. The wind carried only dust and quiet, but the boy carried more history, memory, witness. He tightened his grip on the badge, steps careful, deliberate. The house, the fence, the wind, and the cowboy became one unbroken line of protection and resolve. The neighbors drifted away slowly, their presence fading into the dusk. The boy turned back toward the house once more. "I know now," he whispered. The cowboy nodded. "Good." The boy inhaled deep, feeling the weight of eyes and words, fences and badges, and for the first time, he felt he belonged somewhere by choice, not fear. The shadows lengthened, dust rolled over the fence posts, and the boy let himself feel steady. Not safe, not unbroken, but alive. The cowboy fell silent beside him, letting the moment hold. Wind and memory circled, wrapping around them both, the land remembering, and the boy finally learning to stand. The father was gone, but not really. He lingered like smoke at the edge of the property, watched and weighed. He hadn't been arrested, no chains, no court, but he was watched, measured, contained. The boy knew it before he saw the sheriff's truck pull up, tires low and humming over the gravel. His stomach tightened and loosened all at once. "You'll regret this," the father called from the edge of the road, voice sharp, brittle. The boy's hands clenched the badge tight. "I already did," he said, not moving from the porch step. The father blinked, lips pressing thin. No one moved. The cowboy stayed quiet, standing behind the boy, hands loose at his sides but ready. The wind rolled over the hills, brushing the dry grass against fence posts, carrying the faint hum of distant engines. The boy's chest rose and fell fast. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. He just held the moment, letting it stretch. The father's words hung heavy, but the boy didn't answer. His eyes followed the line of the fence, traced its posts, counted them one by one. The cowboy's presence pressed into him, steady, unyielding. He didn't need words. Outside, dust lifted with the breeze, curling around boots and low walls, stirring memories long buried. The father's gaze shifted, and the boy noticed it, hesitation, something fragile beneath the arrogance. The sheriff stayed just beyond, quiet, watching both men and boy, the law hanging like a shadow over dry dirt. The boy pressed the badge against his chest, feeling the weight of the past and the measure of what he had endured. His breathing slowed. The cowboy said nothing. He let the boy carry the quiet, carry the tension, carry the power of presence. The father moved back, stepping onto the road, watched by men who measured freedom in small increments. The boy didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He simply exhaled, a little laugh escaping, light but certain. The house behind him settled, walls creaking softly in acknowledgement. The fence stretched long, shadows thin and sharp. The boy finally climbed the porch, slow, careful, hands still gripping the badge. The cowboy followed, silent, letting the boy reclaim each step as his own. Dust drifted across the yard, stirred by wind and memory, settling again in the cracks and worn boards. The boy felt the weight of what had passed and what remained. The father's presence faded, distant now, measured by engines and the road. The sheriff's truck rolled down the incline, tires kicking loose stones. The boy's chest rose and fell. He didn't need to move. He didn't need to speak. He had stood. He had stayed. The cowboy stepped beside him, hands on his own hips, quiet and steady. Shadows stretched long over the land, across fence posts, over dry grass, over a boy learning he could sleep without checking doors, without listening for footsteps that weren't coming. The house remembered. The wind whispered. Dust rolled over the threshold. The boy let his chest fall and rise in a rhythm of his own making, finally alone with someone who stayed beside him, finally free enough to rest. The night pressed close, quiet and sharp, a weight he carried willingly. And as he climbed the steps toward the porch once more, hands loosening their grip on the badge just a fraction, he felt for the first time that survival could be enough. That witnessing and standing and holding still could carve out a space no one else could touch. The cowboy didn't speak. He didn't need to. The boy's chest rose and fell steady. Outside, the wind rolled across the hills again. The boy closed his eyes and let the quiet fill him, letting the weight settle into the house, the fence, the hills, and himself. Morning came slow, pale light spilling over the hills and cutting across the fence posts in long, sharp lines. The boy moved quietly through the yard, feeding the horses with careful hands, measuring each scoop of grain as though he could balance the weight of the past in their troughs. The cowboy leaned against the gate, hat tipped low, watching. "You gonna send me away?" the boy asked, voice small but steady. The cowboy shook his head. No, the boy's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Forever?" The cowboy met his eyes, voice low, certain. "Long as you want." The boy let that sink, chest rising and falling slower now. He ran his fingers along the worn wood of the fence, fingers brushing over the marks and scratches from years and memories. The morning light made the fence look different, somehow older and yet stronger, and he realized it had changed, just like him. The cowboy stepped closer, letting the boy feel his presence without words. "You ready for breakfast?" he asked. "I guess," the boy said, glancing at the small stove smoke curling from the kitchen. They moved together toward the house. Each step was quiet, deliberate. The boy carried the badge in his pocket, weight pressing steady against his leg. When they reached the fence line again, the cowboy stopped. "You think it's just a fence now?" he asked. The boy shook his head. "No. It's different. Like me." The cowboy nodded once. "Good. Keep it that way." They worked together in silence, patching loose boards, hammering nails, resetting posts. Each strike of the hammer felt like a small claim against the past, against what had been, against fear. The boy paused, breathing heavy, hands dirty but steady. "Fence looks different now," he said. The cowboy wiped sweat from his brow. "So do you." The boy looked up, meeting the cowboy's eyes. A small, understanding smile passed between them. No words needed. Just work. Just presence. The morning sun climbed higher, spilling warmth across the yard. Horses shifted in the paddock, dust rising and falling around them. The boy worked quietly, hammer in hand, learning rhythm and patience, learning that choice could shape more than punishment ever could. Nails bent sometimes, boards splintered, but they kept going. Neither spoke of the past, nor asked what came next. Presence and labor were enough. The cowboy moved beside him, steady, hand hovering near the hammer in case help was needed, but letting the boy lead. Dust rolled across the dry yard, drifting over fence posts and footprints alike. The boy paused once, hand on the post, and looked down the long line of the repaired fence. He smiled faintly, chest rising with quiet pride. "I never thought it could feel like this," he said. "Like what?" the cowboy asked. "Safe. Or mine. Somehow mine." The cowboy didn't answer. He simply watched, letting the boy own that feeling. Shadows shifted as the sun climbed higher. The boy dug a small hole at the base of one post. He placed the badge inside, dirt covering it slowly, deliberately. It pressed into the ground, a marker of survival, memory, and choice. The cowboy nodded, approving, quiet. "Done?" he asked. "Done," the boy said. He stepped back, surveying the line of the fence, strong and repaired. The cowboy fell in step beside him. They walked slowly toward the house, dust curling around their boots. The air was warm, steady, carrying the faint smell of earth and horses and wood. The boy felt the fence behind him like a promise kept, like a weight finally laid down. He didn't need to look back again. The cowboy stayed beside him, silent, letting the moment hold. The boy's chest rose and fell, steady and unafraid. He realized he could carry the scars, the memory, the quiet, and still keep moving. And for the first time, the fence didn't teach punishment. It taught resilience, choice, and a quiet kind of home. The wind whispered over the yard, dust rolling, light settling, and the boy felt the world press gentle against him for the first time. The boy worked the fence again, this time with purpose that wasn't punishment. Each board he lifted, each nail he hammered, felt like a claim on something he could call his own. The sun pressed warm against his back, dust rolling around his boots, carrying faint smells of earth and horses. The cowboy stayed nearby, letting him lead, silent but present, hands ready only if needed. "Fence looks different now," the boy said, stepping back to examine his work. Nails lined up straighter, posts set firm, boards patched where age and rot had weakened them. "So do you," the cowboy said, voice low, almost a whisper. The boy turned, meeting his eyes, chest rising with a quiet pride he had never known. They worked side by side in silence, the rhythm of hammer and wood filling the yard. Each strike of the hammer was careful, deliberate, as if it could drive out the memory of rope and fear. Dust lifted around them, catching sunlight in golden streaks. The boy paused, wiping sweat from his brow, fingers brushed against the rough wood, feeling the texture as though it carried the history of all the fences that had hurt him. "I like it better now," he said, voice soft. "Fence?" the cowboy asked. "Yeah. All of it." The cowboy nodded once. "Good." The boy's hands itched to move faster, to fix everything at once, but he slowed, learning patience in each measured strike. The air held the quiet weight of something settling, the house behind them standing solid, memory-filled, witness to their work. He stopped at the last post, hammer in hand, chest rising heavy. "Done," he said. The cowboy surveyed the line, nodding slowly. "Looks like it stayed up," he said. "And I stayed too," the boy replied, half-smile, small but certain. They walked along the fence together, hands brushing against the wood, feeling its solid weight. The boy's chest eased with each step, learning that repair wasn't just about fences, it was about carrying himself steady in the world. Shadows stretched across the yard, long and sharp, dust curling in small waves over the posts. The cowboy didn't speak. He didn't need to. The boy understood the silence was enough. He could choose where to stand. He could choose to stay. The sun shifted, climbing higher, lighting the lines of the fence and the boy's steady hands. Each post and board held weight, and each one reflected the change in him. He didn't think about the rope left behind, or the father who never returned. Only about the work, the touch of wood and hammer, the slow rhythm of claiming something for himself. The cowboy followed at a distance, letting him own the space. No words were needed, only presence. The boy's hands were sore, dust-caked and strong. The fence held, solid, repaired, a promise standing upright. He ran a finger along the top, tracing its line, feeling for the first time that something could hold and protect him. The cowboy watched, steady, letting the boy feel the quiet weight of home forming under his own hands. The wind lifted again, rolling dust across the yard, brushing against the posts, against their boots, against a boy learning the meaning of staying, of building, of choosing. Silence held them. No threat. No judgment. Only the sun, the dust, the fence, and the boy carving out a space he could finally call his own. He looked at the cowboy, chest rising steady, and said, "I think I'm ready to stay." The cowboy nodded once, slow, firm. "Then stay." Dust settled around them. The fence stood straight. The boy stood beside it. And for the first time, home wasn't a place forced upon him. It was the choice he made. The boy stood at the fence once more, sunlight cutting sharp lines across the worn wood, dust drifting in lazy waves. His hands were free, clean, no rope, no scars pressing against the line of his wrists. He traced the posts with slow fingers, feeling the solid weight of each one. The cowboy stayed behind him, leaning against the gate, silent, watching. "You saved me," the boy said, voice small, sure. The cowboy shook his head. No, the boy pressed his lips together, searching the man's face. "You stayed." The cowboy's eyes softened, heavy with memory. "That's harder," he said. The boy looked down at the ground, then back to the fence, then up at the horizon. The rope that had bound him was gone, buried beneath the post with the badge. The fence stood upright, solid, repaired. He ran a hand along it again, slow, deliberate. "It feels different," he said. "Safe." The cowboy didn't answer, just nodded. Silence stretched between them, heavy and alive. The boy's chest rose and fell, steady, measured. He felt the weight of absence, of past fear, of memory pressing against him, but now it carried no command, no threat, only choice. He stepped back and surveyed the line of fence, hands brushing over every post, every nail hammered straight, every board fixed. He realized the space was his now, claimed by his own labor, his own will. "I can go where I want," he said softly. The cowboy tilted his hat, watching the horizon beyond. "You always could," he replied. The boy smiled faintly, understanding the difference between freedom and choice. The wind brushed his face, carrying dust over the dry earth. He stepped through the gates slowly, feeling the rhythm of the land beneath his boots. The cowboy followed, silent, letting the boy lead. Shadows of the fence stretched long and thin across the yard, bending in the sun, bending with him. The boy paused at the edge of the field, chest rising steady, hand brushing against a post. He didn't feel the pull of fear, of expectation, of punishment. Only the pull of decision. He could go left. Right. Straight ahead. He chose none for now. He stood there, feeling the air move across him, the land solid beneath him, the cowboy waiting, present, not guiding, not stopping. "I think I know what shelter is," the boy said, voice low. The cowboy didn't speak. He didn't need to. The boy understood, it wasn't walls, or fences, or even protection. It was choice. It was presence. It was knowing someone stayed when leaving was easier. Dust rolled along the fence posts, sunlight glinting over the top, casting bright lines and long shadows. The boy closed his eyes, breathed deep, and felt the rope buried behind him, the badge beneath it, the fence upright and holding. He opened his eyes and stepped forward, deliberate, steady. The cowboy remained at the gate, watching, silent. The boy's hands were free. His path was his own. The fence behind him held memory and witness, choice and protection. He moved slowly, dust curling around his boots, sunlight on his face, and the world felt unbroken, not perfect, but his. Home, at last, was the space he chose to walk through.